if we did require, we did call the police in to respond to the
Ah,
particular situations. So that is something that also happened. We had a situation with a quarry that we went out to. The quarry was releasing quarry effluent into the river, and it was right immediately above the Caroni water supply, the largest water supply for the country. So what was happening is that the country was suffering from water
yeah.
shortage because they could not treat the water fast enough. The water was so dirty. So we had to identify the pollution source. And when we did identify the pollution source, we sent the police across to sort of get them to shut down the release of effluent so that the authority could clean the water properly and send it off to the customers.
Hey everyone, my name is Johannes Patak. I am the Caribbean Program Officer at Climate Tracker, and welcome back to one of our new episodes of our podcast. And today we have with us none other than, it's my privilege to announce her and to introduce her, Dr. Sharda Mahabir. And you guys, I know you guys want to know who she is. I'm just going to tell you briefly who she is because she is doing a lot in her field. In the field of climate change, water scarcity, and a lot more things. I'm just going to tell you guys who she is. So, Dr. Mahabir, she holds a PhD in environmental biology from the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine, and she's also a part-time lecturer at the Department of Life Sciences at the same university. She imparts her expertise in pollution monitoring and assessment to students while also serving as a national coordinator for the Global Environment Facility (GEF), Small Grants Program (SGP), and supporting NGOs. She has also played a key role in the first ever ecological assessment of river across Trinidad and Tobago, revealing human activities as the primary source of contaminants. Notably, in 2015, she initiated the Adopt the River program, fostering collaboration among various stakeholders to enhance river conditions. Thank you, Dr. Mahabir, for being with us today. And looking at the last sentence of your bio, I'm eager to know, could you tell us more about this program
Right.
before we go into the
So
topic?
I graduated from the University of the West Indies, my PhD in 2010, plenty years ago, right? And when I did, I had actually done a national survey of heavy metals in rivers. And after sampling over 60 sites across both Trinidad and Tobago in both seasons, so it was a lot of sampling work. One of the things that struck out to me was the fact that in all of these community spaces that I had gone into to take water samples across the both islands, people didn't understand about rivers, and they didn't understand about their impacts on the river. So when I graduated from my PhD, I didn't have a job. So I literally went to the Water Authority. I wrote a letter and attached my resume saying, I've just finished this. I've done a national survey. I would like to contribute towards solving the water problems, because if the heavy metals issues are also part of our water supply, which the authority also faced. So they hired me as an environmental consultant, and my job was to create, well, first to do an integrated water resource management plan for the entire of the country.
Mhm.
And I was given a team, fantastic team of 19 students, graduate trainees within the authority to help me come up with this entire plan. And we compiled the plan, presented it, and then coming out of that was the Adopt a River program, which was agreed to by the authority as the new strategy that the authority would take in order to address the lack of information, but also to get communities to help manage rivers better, so that the authority will benefit from better quality of water when they at their extraction points. I hope I'm explaining
Yeah, yeah,
carefully,
sure.
right?
Mhm.
Good. So the communities now, the purpose of the Adopt a River program is to bring together corporate entities, educational institutions, government agencies, community groups, all on the same table to come up with projects that will help to address the pollution in each of the watersheds. So Trinidad and Tobago has 69 watersheds, 54 in Trinidad and 15 in Tobago. So we had to, for each of the watersheds, go back to the IWRM plan and identify some of the activities. Now, some watersheds needed recycling, but other watersheds needed things like check dams and intakes, right? So we had to now work with the community group, so engage the communities to get more empowered in terms of being able to understand. First of all, we had to teach them about the river, and we had to teach them about the importance of water. And finally, we had to get them, energized enough to be able to come out and volunteer in our projects. So that's where I came up with what we refer to as the Water Warriors Training Program. So the Water Warriors Training Program is an educational program that basically teaches communities about the basics about water, about the basics of your watershed, and how to test your water. So what I did was because my PhD was part chemistry, I found a very nice water quality testing kit, and I translated that water quality testing kit in such a way to communities that it was easy for them to use and easy for them to collect data. So by the time I left the Adopt a River program in 2019, we had trained over 200 persons from communities in water quality testing. But more importantly, their data was coming to us to help guide us in terms of the management of the water, right? And it was the first project in the Caribbean where water quality data was coming from a community to an authority. We also created an app that allowed the community members to now collect that data in the field. So you don't have to fill out form and then go home and put it in an Excel sheet. No, we created an app, right?
Yeah.
And the app is called Adopt a River, and it's available on the Google Store. And the app not only allows you to upload the data, but also physical characteristics about the river. Like did you see any garbage? You could upload pictures and do reports on any supposed pollution events. So the program itself produced the tools that would help communities to better manage their resources, and also help to change the behavior that communities had towards the rivers. And that was important because sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
How did the government respond to it? Because you're helping in some kind of way, you're helping the government collecting data so they can make policy.
That's correct. So I also worked at the Water Authority, and I was aware that with the staffing that we had, the most that we could do, we had over 200 sampling sites across in 2 countries, right? When you have 200 sampling sites, you could only do those 200 sampling sites at least once a season, which means that you're only doing it twice a year. So between that gap now, you don't have any water quality data. You have a data on a specific day in the dry season and data in specific day in the wet season. There's no data in between. And you are making guesstimates of what the water quality is based on two values, right? Wet season and dry season. This allowed the gap to be filled with data from the communities. And specifically, if there were any pollution events, the community would rush out and take a sample and analyze it and put it into their data. So we were able to capture like pollution events, pictures of the pollution events, so on and so forth. All of that was actually included in the Adopt a River program.
Okay, and do they like use the data to like to when they see all these when people throw filled, when there are things in the water, the quality is not good, do they do something about it or not?
The authority has what we call an water police, right? It has its own supplementary police. And if we did require, and we had to do it twice during the program, or 3 times during the program that I was there, if we did require, we did call the police in to respond to the particular situations. So that is something that also happened. We had a situation with a quarry that we went out to. The quarry was releasing quarry effluent into the river, and it was right immediately above the Caroni water supply, the largest water supply for the country. So what was happening is that the country was suffering from water shortage because they could not treat the water fast enough. The water was so dirty. So we had to identify the pollution source. And when we identified the pollution source, we sent the police across to sort of get them to shut down their release of effluent so that the authority could clean the water properly and send it off to the customers.
Wow. So that this is a good example to see how community and government can come together and like tackle like a common problem.
Yes, and I'm going to say I still stand firmly that communities are the strongest stakeholder in any country. They just do not understand because of politics and brainwashing and whatever else. Communities do not understand their power, right? And I honestly believe that if communities were to take greater responsibility and be how should I put it, be more conscious and more aware of what their community needs are, I think communities can make huge differences, not just in Trinidad and Tobago, but in the entire of the Caribbean, in the entire of the world. People on the
Yes.
ground are the ones with the power, not the politicians. They do
Wow.
what we like and favor. So the point is, if we say that we want our rivers clean, if we say that we want we want legislation against plastics or whatever, then when we say it, they have to respond. It is just the way of politics, unfortunately. Well, fortunately or unfortunately. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. But it's commendable work that you do. And I think if we take an example from what you did and that it's still going on about the power of community, I think a lot of things would have changed already in the Caribbean that we are trying to change like for so many years as it comes to climate change. But going from Trinidad to Tobago now to the Caribbean, Dr. Mahabir, what can you tell us about our water resources in the Caribbean? I know the mainland countries in the Caribbean, we're known for a lot of water that we can drink, we can use, but is it being used sustainable? That's another question. But what's the situation right now when we talk about the Caribbean countries that are islands and the mainland countries?
Okay, so with respect to the island states, the small island developing states within the Caribbean, the climate change predictions by the IPCC, there's a document, look it up, Climate Change and Water, it's Bates 2018 or IPCC 2018, whichever way you want to reference it. But look up Climate Change and Water, and all the statistics I'm about to kind of quote is going to come from there. Basically, what's going to happen is the Caribbean is going to get hotter and drier. So the climate change predictions, and we have already started seeing it because that was published in, no, I said 2018, no, it's 2008, my mistake. It was IPCC 2008, climate change and water. So since 2008, or even before 2008, we already knew that the climate was going to change in such a way that it was going to negatively impact how we receive water for the Caribbean. Now, in the Caribbean, the main water supplies are surface water and groundwater, right? But surface water and groundwater, if you understand the basic hydrological cycle, which is the water cycle, then you would understand the only way we get surface water and groundwater is if it rains. Okay?
Yeah.
So in other words, most of our water supply comes from rainfall. Okay? So if there's a change in rainfall, then our water supply is going to be impacted. All right. In a case like Trinidad and Tobago, 60% of the water supply comes from surface water and 28% comes from groundwater. That makes a total of 88% of the water supply for Trinidad and Tobago is dependent on rainfall. Following me?
Wow.
Right. That's the majority of the water supply. And that is the status of most of the Caribbean islands. Now, Trinidad and Tobago is fortunate because it is very water rich, right? It is not water stressed. Okay. It technically, compared to the other islands, it has a lot of water available to it because, of course, geologically we are almost part of the South America because we're so far south. Okay. But much of the other islands are actually independent islands. And what has happened over time is that they have actually started drying out as well. Okay. And their water supply still remains surface water and groundwater. Right?
Yeah.
What we mean by drying out, according to the climate change predictions in the IPCC 2008 report, the Caribbean is going to see over the next 50 years, and this 50 years started since 2008, not this year, over the next 50 years, we are going to start to see that the rainfall patterns are going to change. So
I'm
we're
sorry.
going to,
Ik ben bezig in een podcast recording. I'm sorry for
right.
that, Dr. Mahabir.
That's all right. And Johannes, you could call me Sharda. It's fine.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
Sharda.
Yeah. So so the rainfall patterns are going to change, and we've already started seeing that. So what we're seeing now, the dry season is extremely dry and hot, right? And the
Yeah.
wet season, the rainfall comes sporadically. So it's almost like a continuation of the dry season, but then we'd have like a day or two of rain and then it'll go back again and we go back into a dry season situation. That's what's happening a lot in the entire of the region. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But the problem is that because all of the islands are so isolated and whatnot, that the impact of that on surface water and groundwater is more impactful. It's more evident,
Yeah.
right? So in other words, the prediction is that by 2080 for the latest, the Caribbean is going to see a reduction in water supply of about 20%, right?
And
I don't
what
know
and if we could put that figure into what would it mean for our
right.
communities here?
So I'm now going to give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
In Trinidad and Tobago in 2010, we had a drought, and it was a deficit about 10 to 12% of water, right? What did that mean for the man on the street? It meant that households did not receive water for at least a month. So in other words, what you had stored in your tanks and in your buckets and in your container was all you had to use for an entire month. Sometimes you had four people households, 6 people households living off of 400 gallons of water, which is literally one tank of water. What does that mean? You can't bathe every day. You can't brush your teeth every day. You can't wash wares. You can't wash clothes. It means, therefore, you can't go to work regularly. You can't go
Yeah.
to school regularly, right? And as for cooking, you have to now reduce your water consumption for drinking, as well as you reduce your water consumption uh, um, for cooking. But more importantly, you definitely had to reduce your water consumption for flushing toilets.
Okay,
So,
so knowing that we have the facts by 2080, we are going to have 20% less water than we have right now. What can we as Caribbean citizens do? Because in my country, we still use the same water that we drink to flush the toilets, to plan the waters, to wash cars. So what can we do about it from our side?
right. So the thing is, we are not reusing or using water efficiently, right? So when we wash wares and we wash our hands in the bathroom, okay, when we do that, that water, it runs out in a pipe
Yeah.
and it goes out into a drain because
Yes.
we've now created this Americanized system of management,
In
right?
my country, it still goes in the gutter in front.
Right. When you say gutter, do you mean a drain or do you mean a pipe?
No, not a pipe. So it goes from the like a drain. It goes from the bathroom straight in the drain where you can see it just going into the gutter.
Right. Great. So that does two things. One, you waste the water, right? And two, you now contaminate the drain or the
Mhm.
gutter that now leads into a river that will now cause pollution in the river. Okay,
Yes.
good. Traditionally, if you go to villages, you will see that the water comes out of the house and goes straight into the soil.
Mm.
And in those places, they would they would plant little trees, they would plant flowers. In Trinidad, when I was growing up, our house, we used to, my grandparents' house, we used to have plant spinach. That's the best word I can use.
Yeah.
In Trinidad is dasheen bush, right?
Yeah.
Right. We would plant dasheen, dasheen, the ground provision. Right.
Yeah.
We would plant it there because Dashin loves that kind of water, like mucky water.
Mm-hmm.
Dashin loves mucky water. So, but we eat the leaves to make callaloo. So
Mm-hmm.
we would always have a consistent supply of callaloo, if you understand. Callaloo bush. I don't
Yeah,
know
I
if you know
know
what
it.
I'm talking
I
about.
went to Guyana and I had it there.
Right. So we would always have a nice supply of the callaloo bush, so which in itself is a food source. Okay. when I knew that growing up as well, in my mother's house, we used to grow ginger lilies. So the pipe
Mm-hmm.
used to come out and we would plant ginger lilies. So we always had pretty flowers to go and share with the
Yeah.
neighbors and who had wedding and wanted flowers and so on and so forth. Right? So in other words, we use the water for a resource that could still help us. We could sell the flowers and make some money, or we could use the dashing bush for food, or we could sell the dashing bush and make some money. Understand me? We don't do that anymore, right? So what we do is just pour pollution straight down the river, right? Literally, that's all we do. It. We are converting rivers into drains, right? Wastewater drains. We are not considering that rivers need to have our own life of its own. We are converting them into our way of waste management,
And
because most
what
houses. Mhm.
what do you think is the reason that made that transition? Because once we were doing it good, and suddenly we're not doing it good anymore.
I
What
personally think it's the influence of the media that we've exposed to. So I don't know about Suriname, but in Trinidad and Tobago, we get a lot of American television. So when
Mm-hmm.
we're watching Desperate Housewives, I'm trying to
Mm-hmm.
think, and Young and Restless, and we see all these Americanized shows and these, urban developments. Everybody
Yeah.
wants to live in an urban development. There are no shows about people living in a rural space and using an outhouse,
Yeah.
and living in holistic with the land. No, 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 we don't have movies like that. We have
That's
movies of people living in a lap of luxury. And
mm-hmm.
because of that kind of thing, everybody wants to drive this car and everybody wants to have the house that is split level and American design, and our faucets have to be silver to match the silver of the this and the that.
Yeah.
Oh, don't talk about that whole channel that is now available on American television that is just about flipping houses and making houses and so on and so forth. We are heavily, heavily influenced by Western culture. And we are losing our own indigenous ways of doing things because of that westernization. Now,
And
don't get me wrong.
how
Mhm.
can we bring that back?
I always think that behavior could be changed. Has to
Mm-hmm.
be consistent behavior. In the last meeting that we had, I gave the example of the fact that, we all know we're supposed to exercise regularly. Me too. I'm supposed to exercise. Stand up
Yeah.
and January the 1st. Yes, man, you're walking. God,
Yeah.
by February, you're dead out with that. You're not doing that again. And for 2-3 months, you'll stop and then you'll feel guilty and then you'll start back again. Right.
Again, yes.
So that was an example about behavior change. Okay. We need consistent behavior change, which would be the equivalent of exercising every day, whether we want to do it or not. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that we need to do that is we need more and more young people to see that I am using my gray water to water my plants, or I have taken out my PVC pipe, or I have drilled holes in my PVC pipes and planted. Nobody's ever thought about or considered that same plastic pipe that you have running out from your kitchen waste and your bathroom waste. Why
Mm-hmm.
not go and poke holes like a hydroponic system and
Oh
put
yeah.
little plants inside of it and allow the plants to help to still clean the plant? That way you keep your drain. You don't have to break much of your infrastructure, but also you get to have the benefit of the plants, the cleaning of the nutrients, and so on and so forth. My point is we don't have that sort of innovation. And I have plenty of ideas. Don't get me wrong. It's just who will
Yeah.
take it up, right?
I
Who's
agree.
brave enough to go in the mother house or in their house now and dig up the pipe and drill a hole in the pipe and so on and so forth? Not a lot of people would do that. Not a lot of
Yeah.
people think it's crazy. How could you dig up your pipe? You're so bad. And
Yeah.
that is where the problem arises. We have a conformity culture, right? Everything has to be a certain way. We have to wear certain clothes and we have to do things a certain way. And it is the conformity culture that is resulting in the kind of problems that we have. And we need people to understand that we need to stop conforming and complying, and we need to start breaking away from that, but popularizing breaking away from it. We need to popularize being independent thinking to be, revolutionary in our urban spaces. We don't need revolutionaries doing that in a rural place where it's already being done. No.
Mhm.
We need urban people to take rural solutions and bring it into their urban spaces.
Do you think that governments can play a big role in this? Because I know if we make some policies and you put it like it's mandatory by law that that we need to make these changes, do you think that that is a way, or do you say no? It starts with awareness.
I've been in this business for a while, right? I mean, I've been doing this kind of work since 2010. So we're talking about 14 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it is my personal opinion from my experiences. I do not believe in a top-down approach. I do
Okay.
not believe in legislating and policing at the top level and coming down. No. Most of the work that I did under Adopt a River was empowering communities and making examples out of projects. And those projects would now be adopted by governments. So I'm talking bottom-up approach
Mhm.
as compared
Yeah.
to top-down approach. I don't think the top-down approaches work. They don't work very well. They don't get the buy-in from the communities that you require. So I think communities need to have a bottom-up approach,
Up
and the
approach.
communities need to be given the strength of the recognition and the support in order to be able to do this, as compared to governments trying to take the power and kind of push them down, kind of thing. No, I don't agree with that. Right? Community initiatives or projects can advise on the policies eventually,
Mhm.
but we have to show that they work at this level first.
Okay, so looking at what's happening in the Caribbean, so we know by 2080 we're going to have 20% less of water. The only solution right now that I can see listening to you is it needs to come from the community, from the bottom to the
That is
top.
my perspective. I
Yeah.
am saying governments need to get involved too. Businesses need to get involved as well. But the thing is, the largest voice, let us be real, but the quietest voice is communities. And let
Mm-hmm.
me explain. The largest population of people exists within communities, right? Businesses are few and far apart. Government is only one, right?
But
So
how
at
do
the
we
end,
bring that awareness? Because, for example, if I look at Suriname, for example, we do have a lot of NGOs, CSOs, we have a lot of those. But when it comes to like politics seems to be like the supreme order that we have in the country. How do
right.
we change that mentality and that way of thinking?
Right. So the way that we started doing it with the Adopt a River program is by doing activities that engage communities and attracted the attention of the actual government and other stakeholders, right?
Mm,
Businesses, schools, government would come to these events. My position is communities need to be exemplars and examples of what they want to achieve. Okay, so if it is that you want to have better water management in a community, then you and your 10 households around you need to do something together. All of you are going to do something together. Whether it is to put a bottle of sand, a
mhm.
liter bottle, or a 2 liter bottle of sand in your toilet tank, right? You could say our community has now put 2 liter sand in our toilet tanks to reduce our water consumption from our toilets, right? It could be something as simple as that. Or
Yeah,
it could be something as simple as the community coming together and building a check dam around a spring to make an intake, right? And then you are going to use that intake now, and you attach a pipe to the intake, and then you're using that intake now to go and carry water. You could physically carry water by buckets, or
yeah,
you could use that as you put hoses and now use that to irrigate your crops, right?
yeah.
The point
Oh,
is, the
mhm.
community has to do something that is relevant to them,
Yeah,
right? Do something that is relevant to them. And the problem is that plenty people want to talk, but they don't want to walk.
work.
And
Yeah,
the point is, people don't understand that simple things like you want to solve climate change. Guess what? Put your phone down for an hour every day, right? You want to solve climate change. Guess what? If you have to go out the road to get something in the supermarket, walk,
walk. Yeah,
right? If you want to solve water problems, if it is that you are washing your wares, plug the sink, And when you finish washing wares, pick up the water and water your plants with it.
Exactly.
Right? So the
Because
point is there are
we like to
things,
do everything with the tap open. We shower with the tap open.
right?
We wash dishes
Yes.
with the tap open. Everything with the open tap.
I once did a video, same
Mm-hmm.
design and Rihanna,
Mm-hmm.
from Climate Trackers years ago. We had a challenge in we were all together in CYEN. Well, they were in CYEN. I was the national
Uh-huh.
advisor, right? Good. So they were all in CYEN, and I put out a challenge to the youths in CYEN. I said, I want you to do a video of you reducing your water conservation, and who were able to, wash wares and water plants. So we had series of videos coming out from the youths, right?
Yeah.
I did one washing. I drive a Hilux,
Uh-huh.
right, which is a big vehicle. And I
Yeah.
took one bucket of water, and I made a video of me washing my entire vehicle, one
But
van with a small bucket of water, not a big one, not the huge white
yeah.
buckets. No, I'm talking about a normal small little bucket. I used that, and I washed my entire vehicle, and I captured the entire thing on film, and I sent it to the group. So my point is, we can do it. We're just lazy, and sometimes we have a misconception that it cannot be done, so we're not going to try it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? Mhm,
Talking about crops, right? That we can
mhm.
use the water from our sinks and we can like water our crops. We can do so much with the water that we are like wasting right now. So we're even wasting wastewater. That's what's happening right now.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
But looking at one of our main sources of food, that's
Yes.
agriculture,
Yes.
planting. I mean, for example, the rice sector here in Suriname uses a lot of water, and we cannot use the
Yes.
salt water, of course.
Hmm.
What can we do there on in that
In terms
area?
of solving the rice production,
Just the whole agriculture system that we're having in the Caribbean, because even in Guyana, we still water our plants. Even in Suriname, we do that. We
right?
don't use a lot. Hydroponics are in my country, but you need to have the money to implement hydroponics. It's not that
Yes.
cheap. So
Yes.
what can we as the Caribbean, what can governments do to like even like to secure that valuable water that we have, but still not bringing in danger the food that we need?
Good. So I'm not very familiar with all of the agriculture in Suriname, but I'm going to
Mhm.
use Trinidad and Tobago as another example.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
No.
Good. So in Trinidad and Tobago, we have a lot of agricultural fields, but most farmers, when they go into their agricultural fields, the first thing that they don't do, but they should, is to
Mm-hmm.
establish some sort of pond on their space, right?
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yeah.
So that's the first water conservation thing you should have been doing in the first instance. If you are a neighbor to other farmers, then for all you get together and make one pond in the middle of all you. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Right. That is what should be done. But too many times farmers are always competing with the farmers, and it's always as independent. I had a say about me first kind of situation that is getting
Yeah.
all the entire world into trouble. Okay. We don't understand the power of togetherness and working together. That's the first thing. The second thing is the model of agriculture that we do. Okay. In most instances, it's monocropping. We again, westernization, right? Because traditionally, our forefathers and the first peoples from our countries, we never monocropped. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It was a culture of mixed cropping, right?
Yes.
And so we would plant a coconut tree here and a mango tree
Yeah.
here. So we planted one all over the place, right? Yes,
Yeah.
you see, you're laughing because you know exactly what I'm
We
talking
still
about.
we still we still have it here, you know. When my
Good. No,
grandma
we
used
do
to
it. We
yard,
do the same thing in
all kind
Trinidad
of
too.
trees, all kind of flowers. Nothing is the same.
Yes, nothing is the same. It appears completely unstructured, but
Yeah.
guess what? It works.
Yeah.
It works, right? So you're planting the big trees on one side, and you might plant them in a row if you want, or you might plant them on the
Yeah.
periphery. And then in the center now, you're doing your pigeon peas, you're doing your short crop, your tomatoes, your
And
peppers, your eggplants, and so on and so forth. So you're mixed cropping, right? And it works. It
yeah.
works. The system works. But agriculture in Trinidad and Tobago has evolved or devolved into this monocropping situation that you can't
Mhm.
even talk to the farmers about changing back to.
Wow.
because they don't see it. They have been so brainwashed into thinking that a monocropping means you get more money, when you
Money.
don't even understand with a multi-cropping scenario. You could pick mango from the mango tree, you could pick zabuka from the zabuka tree, you're
Yeah.
selling coconut water, you're selling pigeon peas, you have your tomatoes, everything could work together, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know what's the best part about the entire thing? That model of agriculture is actually more water conservative than, for example, the model of agriculture that we have now with the monocropping. Let me
Okay,
explain
and in what way?
that. Good. So you have let's take a rice field, and we
Mm-hmm.
plant only rice. When the sun comes out and comes above, all the water evaporates.
Yeah.
Good. But if you had trees, it would help to reduce
Ah,
the
would
evaporation.
conserve the water, the roots.
Same
Uh-huh.
thing with respect to monocropping, short crops. If you're doing a space and you have acres and acres of tomatoes, or you have acres and acres of sweet peppers, or you have acres and acres of cabbage, you are
Mm-hmm.
spending the entire day, because the only thing you could see as far as your eye could squint is
Yeah.
one crop, and there's no shade. It helps to
Mm-hmm.
reduce it helps to reduce evaporation rates. That is
Yeah.
why, and that is why a lot of farmers are always pumping and pumping and pumping and pumping water. When in truth and in fact, all they have to do is they literally have to intercrop with trees, right? And of course, they could experiment with different kinds of trees. Some trees have value-added crop products, or fruits that are really high end. Like in Trinidad, avocados are very expensive, right?
Yeah, you too. Mm-hmm.
Right. So the point is, plant some avocado trees, right?
Mm-hmm.
In your own spaces, in your own area, in your own agriculture. If you don't want to do that because you're frightened somebody will come into your land and steal your avocados, then do other crops so that you
Crops.
can,
Yeah.
yeah, and put in, and if you all work together, then you'd have a better chance of reducing climate change.
Hmm.
Climate change in agriculture is something that is based on the perception of the farmers, and we really do need to have more of the mixed agricultural approach, as compared to, because traditionally, for the past 20 or 30 years, the monocropping could have worked. It's perfect. It gives you the volume of what you need to get in a short space of time for the volume of people that you have in terms of the market. No problem, great.
Yeah.
But that model is not, it's not sustainable.
You
So
know,
the point is, the future of agriculture has to change, and it should be more water conservative going forward.
talking about this topic, agriculture, I hear politicians often say, especially Caribbean leaders, when they come to each other's countries, yes, we need to work on the export and provide our citizens with food. Then we don't have to import from outside. Within the
Mhm.
region, let's help each other. And I even heard that Suriname wants to be the food shed for the world, not only the Caribbean. So looking at the way that we are divided, because there are farmers all over the Caribbean in all the countries. Are you happy with the way that they're working together? Or isn't there any collaboration at all?
No, no, I am not pleased whatsoever. Um, I think that a lot more could be done. And the
Mhm.
first stumbling block, and I'm talking from experience, right? I have spoken to farmers. The first stumbling block is their perception of how agriculture has to be done. And it is a monocropping model, etc. I'm not pleased with that whatsoever. I always remember, so at some point in my life, I had the fortunate opportunity to live away. I lived in France. And whilst I was there, in the cold seasons in winter, you were able to get tropical products, things like avocados and tomatoes and whatever. Eggplants, these kind of things. You were still able to get that into France, even though it was cold and it could not be grown outside. Why? Because North Africa, even in the desert areas,
Mhm.
desert areas, even in the desert areas, even in the desert areas, North Africa was maximizing on their water conservation, and they had climate smart agricultural farms that was feeding Europe. Right?
Mm.
Listen to me carefully. You have
Yeah.
climate smart agricultural farms feeding Europe. If farmers were to adopt a lot more of climate smart agricultural techniques, now, don't get me wrong,
Mm-hmm.
doing climate smart agriculture in a tropical environment, they are also semi-tropical, right? They're on that kind of cusp where they get very cold and they get very, very hot as well. But the point is, they still have very cold. We don't have that. We are very humid.
Yeah.
We could also create a climate smart agricultural model for our farmers in the region. I honestly believe that hydroponics and aquaponics are the future for the Caribbean. And I don't seem to understand for the short crops why it hasn't actually been taken off in some of the islands. Infrastructurally, hydroponics and aquaponics are more expensive. They have a high upfront cost, right? Investment that is required at the beginning, but it is something that you can get returns from based on how should I put it, the production that you get, because you get more regular production, less chemical usage.
Yeah.
If you do it correctly, then you wouldn't even have a problem with pests if you kind of intercrop and use the right techniques with the hydroponics. Again, I'm coming back to the culture. So I think those are the solutions for food security for the islands for short crops. For things like other crops that can't grow in hydroponics, I think the mixed model permaculture kind of model is a better model to do agriculture. But again, I want to come back to culture. Let me give you an example. I was in St. Lucia up to last year doing training for Adopt a River program, right? I mean, I don't work with them, but I basically was asked to facilitate an NGO in St. Lucia with some capacity development and water quality assessments.
Okay.
And I went to St. Lucia, and there I saw they were removing trees, huge trees, on some of the most steep slopes. I'm talking about
Mm-hmm.
30, 40-degree slopes. They're
Wow.
removing trees to plant dasheen bush, right?
Uh-huh.
So dasheen has no real roots because it comes out
Exactly.
as a fruit.
Yeah.
You understand? So
Yeah.
when rain fall, dasheen and everybody going down the river, right? And it is the culture. Or because they love dasheen, because they love dasheen and ground provision, they are going to plant it in every space that they have without understanding was the best technique to do it. Right?
Because they could
The
they could keep the tree and plant the dashing underneath the tree,
That's correct.
around the
Not
trees.
only that, why not just throw the dasheen in your backyard,
Exactly. It grows
right
everywhere.
where your wastewater coming out?
Yeah.
Because your dasheen will get it's got kind of 10-pound
Much
dasheen you're
bigger.
going to get,
Yeah.
yeah, coming out of your backyard. You're
Mm-hmm.
going to cut a big piece of forest, and when the topsoil run once, twice, if the dasheen's still on the steep slope, the dasheen will come on this big.
Yeah.
Understand? So the point is, it's about culture. Farmers already know what they know, think they know. And there's a sorry, he who knows not and knows he knows not is a fool, teach him. And he who knows not and knows not he knows not is a child, teach him. And he who knows not he knows not is a fool, teach him. Right. That's where we are in the Caribbean in terms of agriculture.
So
And
I have
unless
to.
we change,
Mm-hmm.
so how do we change that behavior? To change that behavior, we have to take one or two farmers who will actually listen to us.
Us.
Get
Start
them
a
to
pilot.
implement a
A
better
pilot
project.
project. Yeah.
We heralding that across the world, across the Caribbean. We're talking about how fantastic this project is and how we're doing so well. And then other farmers are going to pick
Would
it up.
take. Yeah.
Because you talk and telling the farmers, no, you can't do that. They're not listening. They
Exactly.
won't listen at
You know,
all.
I have to excuse me for the sound. This
I'm not
neighbor and
hearing
that
anything.
neighbor. I mean, we're in the Caribbean, so it's a Caribbean thing, I guess, where the neighbors decide to grind something in the midday when sun is up so high and so hot. But yeah, welcome to the
Okay, but I'm not hearing anything. Don't worry.
Oh,
It's not
okay,
coming
that's good.
across. Yeah.
So, Shada, what I wanted to, I'm a journalist back home here, so I talk a lot with people.
Right.
And the one big challenge that we of journalists have is bring the awareness in a way that would like actually ring a bell by people and
Right.
say, climate change is real, because people still are questioning, is it real or is it not real? Because it's just another hot day. It doesn't matter to them. So
Yeah.
my question now, talking about water, the Caribbean is surrounded by water, and I know that some countries are even like filtering the salty water into like drinkable water. So why would we have to worry about 2080 and worry about all the resources getting much less than we now have, while we can like just use the salt water and filter it, and that's it, and solve the problem?
Okay. So when you filter salt water, right, you are taking the water and you're leaving the salts, right?
Mhm.
So what you end up with is a concentrated solution of salts, okay, that basically you could consider to be toxic or having negative impacts because it's so
Mhm.
concentrated, right?
Yes.
That's what the problem is. If you
Ah,
desalinate, what you're going to do with that salt?
so we are solving one problem and creating another problem at
Let
the
me
same
give you an example. If you take that salt now, right, and you put it back into the sea, that salt water, that concentrated brine, okay,
yeah.
and you put it back into the sea, you're actually making the sea more salty for the fish that are there, and you
Ah,
could kill the fish.
not ending having fish anymore to eat.
Right. If you take the salt now and you evaporate out the excess water, and they say you're going to eat salt, sea salt
Mhm.
now. Problem is this: in the Caribbean, remember we have the Orinoco coming out, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of not just the Orinoco, a lot of the how should I put it? The South American rivers drain, not just the Orinoco,
Mud
into the
water,
actual
everything.
Caribbean Sea.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
So they come out close to and around the Caribbean islands. So the Orinoco comes out close to Trinidad, but the others come out around the Caribbean islands, right? Remember, some of these countries do gold mining.
Yeah.
Good. Mercury is a byproduct of gold mining. So
Mm,
let us say, for example, the mainland is doing gold mining. They
yeah.
release this stuff into the sea, and the currents take it and go. And now
To the-
go when you have all that sedimentation coming out and whatever. I mean, at the end of the day, it could just precipitate out. The mercury could just precipitate out,
Yeah.
or the mercury could become diluted in the whole vast sea. But think about it. That is decades and decades and decades of mercury coming out of that concept. So at some point in time, the environment is going to now start to retaliate because it's going to start to absorb into the food chain, right?
Yeah.
And the environment only has a certain tolerance level to be able to say, okay, I'm going to secure this mercury so it doesn't get into or contaminate anybody in the sediments. But then after a while, if the concentrations get too high, it starts moving up the food chain. Okay,
Yeah.
good. But aside from that, let us assume, for example, it's a wet season and there's a washout of mercury coming out, and somewhere in Grenada, South Coast, right? This mercury is coming out of South America, and somewhere in Grenada, which is somewhere, far out, but still, still within reach, Grenada
Yeah.
decides to desalinate and then to take the salt coming out of the desalination and use it as cooking salt, right? The
Mhm.
potential arises for contamination from the other
Nation.
metals, including
Yeah.
the mercury that is already in there. Okay? So we have to be careful in terms of thinking that desalination is a solution. Not only
Mhm.
that, desalination is expensive. So
Yeah.
we have a desalination plant in Trinidad, a big desalination plant, and it goes down regularly because the filters cannot remove the level of contamination that's
So,
coming in from the sea, right? So it's always shutting down, always shutting down. Here's the third thing. The filters always do not always filter out everything from the sea. So what happens is that people who live in the close vicinity, right? So let's say it's a wet season. So what happens in the wet season is all the erosion comes down into the sea.
mhm.
And the desalination plant pulls in the water that has the eroded material in it, a lot of suspended solids and whatnot together.
Yeah.
Sorry. together with other contaminants. So what is happening is that desalination plant has to remove all of that plus the salt. And sometimes the process is not efficient. And what people would get in their taps is this kind of foul smelling off-colored water.
So it's not providing a solution like it should do.
No, a lot of people will say it's the solution for the problem, but it is not. You
Yeah.
know, I have had friends who say that they don't like to wear white clothes anymore because they live in that area, and because the water doesn't come clean, they can't
Uh,
afford to wear white clothes because
yeah.
it gets stained.
Okay, so looking at all these things that we talked about, I know that there are some countries, again, Suriname, who wants to go and export water. Are we ready for that, or should we keep all the water for ourselves and look for ways to reserve all this water?
But it depends on the demands of the population. So I think if your water supply can be met locally and you do have access, excess, and you do know that your Caribbean counterparts are suffering, yes, shipping water is not a bad idea, right? However, you have to understand something about shipping water. When the water leaves the country, it leaves the country. It's not coming back.
Coming back.
So
Yeah.
right? So you have a deficit in your own space, right? So make sure that before you make a decision to export, you have to make sure that you have enough to run what you currently have in place, which is your agriculture, your industry, your households. And then you have to have your emergency responses of water before you go and share water and your people are suffering, right?
Clear,
If
very
you
much.
if the country is really dire, let's say Antigua is going through a real bad drought and they have absolutely not a drop of water, and
Yeah.
you don't have any extra, but you're ready to sacrifice a little bit, that is also okay, right? But you have to understand that when you take water out of a space, it is coming back. It's not like you could figure, oh, well, the river will give you back more. No. Our climate change prediction is that the river will give you less.
Exactly.
So know what you're doing. You
Yeah.
understand? Know what you're doing. Or at least, let me rephrase that. It's not that it necessarily giving you, yes, it will give you less, but also remember that the river is going to give you the water in a different kind of timing now. So you're going to get all your water at once. Understand? You may get
Yeah.
all your water at once, and then the rest of the time you're dry. Like what happened to Antigua last day. Antigua got so much water, they flood out and everything.
Oh, yep.
It was
Even
bad. 2, 3
Suriname,
days.
Guyana, it happened recently too, like 2 years ago. Big
Right.
flooding, Suriname too. The interior
Right.
flooded heavily.
And then the water, the sun will come out, 2 days of flooding, the water is still on the ground, big sun come out, the water can't go anywhere. You have to wait 2, 3 days for the water to
Exactly.
go down.
Sometimes
But
weak.
right. So even if you wait a week, the point is all of that water is on the ground that is sitting and soaking up all of that sewage from, let's say a village gets flooded out. All the septic tanks are now full. So it's leaching out contaminated
Heavy.
diseases, whatever. That's your water supply.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? That is the
Awesome.
problem. People don't understand that is your water supply now.
Yeah.
So you have to be, we have to be very, very careful and cautious in terms of how we decide how we're going to spend water and use water in our countries going forward.
Awesome. Sharda, I'm looking at the time and I'm seeing that we already reached the 1 hour mark for our episode.
Yeah.
I just want do you have like a closing remarks for our listeners or viewers? What is a perfect water household for a normal person like me, for example? how
Okay.
should how
So
should
when
a
you
perfect water household look like?
Right. So you said something interesting earlier. You said most people don't seem to understand the change in the climate because
Mhm.
they weren't alive that long. They grew into this situation now, so they think that's the normal. And
Exactly.
that's an excellent point, Johannes. You have made a fantastic point because the thing is, I lived through the time that we didn't have climate change, so I know what it is to have rain for weeks and you're not seeing the sun and it raining nice and comfortable. It's like really nice weather, right? That we do not get any longer. right? That is not a norm anymore. So you young people have not been able to experience that kind of thing like we did, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we are the ones who know what it was and what you are losing out on. So the first thing I want people to understand is that climate has changed, right? Take it from the old people like me.
You're not that old,
Climate has
no, no.
changed. I'm sorry, right? I don't care what you say. Climate change, right? Full stop. Okay, right. From that perspective, in terms of being a more water conscious and a climate conscious household, I would say that you need to have at least a rainwater harvester to collect a barrel of water or a tank of water as your emergency response water in case of anything. Okay. I would also recommend if you could purchase a solar system, which is extremely expensive, go ahead and do it. If not, you can't. If you can't get a solar system, buy solar-based sort of
Products.
things like solar
Yeah.
radios, solar lights, LED light bulbs, solar phone chargers, right? Okay. I would also say that all households should also have a small garden and that you should try to use your gray water as much as you can in your small garden. Now, a small garden will help to contribute even as a little bit towards, climate change emission reduction, right? It would also help to allow you to have a food sources on the
Yeah.
side, but it would also help to create a different microclimate in your space. This concretization, I don't believe in it, right?
Okay.
I don't believe in concreting everything. I think concrete is one of the worst things in the world, unless it's porous concrete. Then we
Yeah.
could, right? But even porous concrete is still stopping plants from growing, which I still have a fundamental problem with, right? So I would say create a small garden for your own microclimate, for gray water reuse, and reducing your pollution to rivers. Also for your own food security, but also to help conserve pollinators. So little like these pollinator gardens, or keeping plants in your house, growing a little tomatoes. People don't understand they could grow tomatoes out of a plant pot that you have hanging from a roof or anything like
Yep.
that. There
Exactly.
are unique ways of planting and keeping stuff. I don't know about you, but I grew up in households that used to always have chive and celery, and
Me too. Me too.
we always,
It's hanging right out of the kitchen window. You just have to pluck it and put it in.
right. We need more of those things, right? That's about increasing resilience. What else does uh, I think overall, if we also reduce our use of technology on a daily basis, for our day, like they have the quiet hour, the green hour, something every
Yeah,
year.
Earth Hour.
Everybody globally is supposed to take off
Yeah,
their
Earth Hour.
electricity,
Mm-hmm.
right? What was it called?
Earth Hour.
Earth hour, right?
Yeah,
Right. Earth hour should not be once a year, it should be every day.
every day. Yep.
Right? So I would say everybody go outside and take a walk, go and play with the dog, go water your plants, do something else that we used to do long ago, right?
Mm.
Go outside and skip in the yard. I don't know. Find something to do. Um, do something for yourself so that you are able to have your mental health. That's also for your mental health and
Yeah.
mental wellness, but also reduce the emissions from your house, right? And those would be the major things that I would say what a greenhouse should look like. And those are the things that, Johannes, when I call you in 10 years' time, I had to
Mm-hmm.
hear that this is all things that you're doing, in
Yeah.
your house, because you are a young adult, you are in the phase where you're developing your career, just so you get married,
Uh-huh.
make children and whatnot. So when you do those kind of things, we want to see in your space now that you have incorporated this, and this goes for all of the other young people who are listening to this. Johanna's going to do it, but it's responsibility everybody else who's young now to do the
All the
same thing
people
as well.
around me, I think they're getting sick of me because I'm always on their head. Don't use plastic. When we go out on a travel or something, come with your own cup and your own plate, and not a plastic one. The one you use at home, and you're gonna wash it and then you're gonna reuse it. That's it. They get tired of me all the time.
Right. Sorry, I completely understand. I used to have all of those things. I mean, Rihanna could give you stories. My van has everything in it. It used to have a change of clothes. It used to have a plate, a cup. But worse, I was a little worse. I had a kettle. I had tea, coffee. I'm going all over the country doing
That's a,
meetings with
that's a mini
NGOs.
house.
I start pulling out coffee and tea, and next thing I just see sweet bread. Everybody's like, "This is the magic vehicle," because it has always something, something in it. So
Most of the
yes,
time I always tell my mom I never go in her bag because the bag of herself is a whole house, and now I'm listening at your car, so the women even took over the cars now.
yes. It's the same thing with my handbag. It's the same thing with my handbag. I have everything in my handbag, right down to my wooden chopsticks and my,
Yeah.
my plate. And look for my knife here. You see it? What knife? Yeah, I tell you, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
But that's how it that but that's a good start because that's where the awareness is going to start, from all these small little things and steps that we take and try to
These are Yes, these are
yes,
all
to
small
influence.
things that if
Yeah,
collectively 100,000 people do it,
exactly.
and I would challenge climate trackers. Why not start some sort of Google form or and advertise it as a Google activity where people have to say, for this month, this is what I did to save the climate.
Hey, Sarah, that's a great idea, for our TikTok and all our social media channels. I'm taking this with me for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do
Yep.
that. I will
100%.
register and say, well, this year, this
Yes,
month, composted, and I
exactly.
drank, like I drank from a reusable
Yeah.
bottle,
Let the world
you
see
know.
that even journalists are doing their part.
Yes, yes,
Yes.
exactly. And then you now take the statistics from that 300,000 people from the Caribbean have said, yes, this is what we are doing in order to,
No,
you know,
you're going to
and these are the kinds of behaviors that we still need to adopt. So just make a normal Google quiz and just send it out to all your
I
climate
will.
trackers.
I promise. I'm doing this. I'm doing this for sure. And
Yeah.
tomorrow I have a one-on-one call with Dizan, and this is going to be on my agenda for sure.
Yeah.
This
Let's
is great.
popularize, let's popularize climate smart agriculture. Just
Yeah.
like, let me tell you something, in Trinidad and Tobago, we have reinvented carnival to be jam and wine. It was a cultural change away from the historic way of doing
Mm-hmm.
calypsos and fancy mass, right? Just as we created a cultural change that has been sustainable, just like the cell phones have created a cultural change that has been sustainable. Let us use the cell phones and use the social media and in traditional medias to
Yeah.
popularize climate smart behavior.
I agree. I definitely agree. Yep. Let's use it. Let's use it for things that should make a change, a difference, and show that we can use it for good things too. Because right. But thank you for being with us, Sharda. It was very insightful. It was very. I think people heard what they wanted to hear. Things that keep them going daily, things, very simple things. Is climate change real? Why should we conserve water? Why don't we use water from the rivers? We have so much water around us. But you gave us good insights and reasons why not to, and why we should reserve all that water, and what are the risks that we are facing as not only Caribbean people, but we as humanity are facing.
Mhm.
And I'm happy that you were able to do this with us. Thank you very much, Shada. I don't know if you
Mhm.
want to say something to our viewers, listeners, before we go out.
I know that the majority of the persons who will be watching this podcast hopefully are going to be young persons, and all I could say is that you are the future. You're taking over from us. We're getting old, right? My knees hurting me, my back does hurt, bad. My foot and things can't stand for long. So the point is, you are the future. Listen to me carefully. You all are the future. And we need more people. We need more Shardas, more Rihannas, more of the warriors out there who are physically doing the work on the ground. I could call other persons, some other sectors, like I do work in pollination. We need more Lena Demple Wolves and Celeste Ariandis and Shane Ballas and, Natalie Bodrams and the whole host of people that I know that are on the ground quietly, but effectively making differences. And I want you all to be effective change makers. This talk business. We had a talk, walk the talk now, and you all are the ones that actually make it happen. And you all can do it
with small changes every single day. So I really hope that you all will, take up the opportunity to become change makers for the future, so that we will have an earth to live on, a comfortable earth to live on.
And with that being said, everyone, the pressure is high, people. I mean, we belong to that group of young people. So let's show them that we can do it, and let's show them that when they're that old, that we can take care of them on a very healthy earth. So thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
being with us, everyone. Thank you very much for being with me, everyone. And I'm your boy Johannes, the Caribbean boy. And until our next episode again, don't forget to subscribe for our newsletter and our podcast, and keep following our social media channels, because there are some great opportunities in the pipeline that are going to get enrolled by next month. Sharda, have a nice day, and it was great
you.
having you. We'll stay in touch. Bye bye.
Okay, take care. Bye bye.